On the day before our wedding, I discovered my fiancé's infidelity and it hit me hard. When I confronted him about the affair, he actually had the audacity to say that since we weren't married yet, he didn't think it counted as cheating in any serious way. Considering our guests, we went ahead with the ceremony, but my fiancé's cheating became a major obstacle, leading us to halt proceedings. Later, my fiancé disappeared, but I managed to track him down with the help of some people, and what unfolded was beyond anything I could have imagined. What on earth happened? The day before the wedding, my fiancé Paul's infidelity was exposed. I was surprised that something like this could actually happen, and I never imagined it would happen to me. We were promising each other a future and getting married, so I never even considered the possibility of him cheating. Were there any signs before this happened? People like that sometimes cheat even before they propose. There were no signs in particular. Paul and I met at a matchmaking party where he approached me and I thought our conditions and personalities matched, so we decided to start dating. At that time, I was in my late 20s, and because all my high school friends were already married, I felt a bit rushed. We scheduled our dates on specific days, deciding the time and place via WhatsApp before meeting there. If he was cheating, it would be difficult to notice on days we didn't meet. After dating for over a year, Paul proposed to me. I was very happy, but as the wedding approached, I started worrying if I could really be a good wife. Maybe I was putting too much pressure on myself to protect my future with Paul. So even on the day before the wedding ceremony, I couldn't calm down and wanted to see Paul's face. I thought about video calling him, but Paul didn't answer his phone easily, so I headed to the nearest station where he lived. There I found Paul in the midst of an affair. They were walking arm in arm, clearly cheating. I followed them and took many photos as evidence. There was enough evidence that he couldn't deny his infidelity. At that moment, I thought even if I confronted them both, it would be 2 against 1, so I waited for them to separate. Late at night, after Paul and his affair partner parted ways, I confronted Paul. "Hey, who's that woman just now?" When I asked, Paul was briefly surprised, but then wore a deeply annoyed expression, and I realized, so this is who he really is. "This is cheating, you know. I can't marry you like this."
"What are you talking about? We're not married yet, so it's fine, right? Once we're married, I won't cheat. This is fine. Besides, I'm properly separated from Beth now."
I was dismayed to hear that. Beth, by the way, is the name of the cheating partner. There's no excuse for that, right?
That's why stubborn women are no good.
When he said that, I was already at my wit's end. No, at this point, the wedding should be called off. It's pitiful for the guests who will celebrate without knowing anything about a couple about to split up. I really wanted to dump Paul at this point. The day before the wedding, guests have already been staying at the hotel where the wedding will take place, having traveled from far away. On the day of the ceremony, I discovered that Paul had cheated on me. I started to wonder if it might be best to cancel the ceremony, but for now, we'll still have the ceremony tomorrow as originally planned. We'll discuss properly whether to break off the engagement afterwards. If we do, we'll return the gifts to the guests. When I said that, Paul didn't seem to agree and started to complain.
"Why did it have to come to this? This is absurd."
I ignored that and went home. But I couldn't sleep at all, and in the morning, exhausted, I headed to the venue. Somehow I managed to hide it with that makeup and put on a smile, but my parents noticed and asked if I was nervous. Yeah, I was really worried if we could make it through smoothly until the end. I said that and tried to hide Paul's affair, but my 2 lifelong friends who have known me for 20 years saw through it. They noticed something was wrong and immediately asked, "What's wrong?" Even though I made excuses like I told my mother, they didn't believe me at all. Looking into their eyes, I was convinced that I couldn't hide anything from these 2. Reluctantly, I told them about the previous day's events. Then they got really angry and even scolded me. "Why are you trying to go ahead with a wedding as if nothing happened?" And so the 2 friends ran all the way to where both families' parents and relatives had gathered, and they told everything. The initiative of those 2 best friends is amazing. I think it would have been better to tell everything from the beginning. At that time, Paul's mother was absent from her seat, and Paul's father and all the relatives turned pale as they listened to the story. Then Paul's father immediately brought Paul over, and both of them knelt down and apologized in front of me. As for my parents, my father kept blaming Paul with harsh words, while my mother hugged me and cried. I regretted not speaking up sooner after all.
"I don't intend to blame you, Nancy, but I do wish you had told us sooner."
When Paul's father said that to me, I reflected on it and apologized to everyone. However, for those who came from afar, having already been here since the day before, it was difficult to suddenly bring up canceling the engagement. While explaining this, I started crying, but Paul still seemed unable to understand.
We're not married yet, so it shouldn't matter. If you want to make a fuss about cheating, she should wait until we're married to complain. Well, it's not a problem for us since I broke up before getting married.
With statements like these, my father's anger intensified. Relatives from the groom's side also criticized Paul with expressions of disbelief. Then Paul's father said,
The moment you get engaged and visit each other's families, it becomes a major issue involving compensation. You don't understand the seriousness of the situation.
He lectures loudly, and Paul seemed to freeze in response. For a moment, the scene fell silent, but then Paul's mother hurried over. Don't gang up on Paul like that, all of you. Isn't Paul pitiful? While saying this, Paul's mother began to pat Paul's head sympathetically while he remained kneeling on the floor. It's terrible to gang up on him like this, isn't it?
Yeah, I haven't done anything wrong yet. Everyone blames me.
Is that so? I'll straighten out those kinds of people myself. As they had this conversation, Paul's father sighed deeply.
Take your mother outside. This isn't going anywhere.
Upon saying that, several male relatives from the groom's side took Paul's mother outside of the venue. Paul's father acted as a coordinator among the relatives, the voice of authority. Having lost his ally, Paul reverted to a precarious situation.
Anyway, everyone's going to blame me, right? I messed up. I should just take the blame for everything,
he said, making a half-hearted apology. Still, everyone was furious about it. Because of a mother like that, he's grown up without knowing right from wrong. I never realized Paul's true nature would come to this. I thought he was a bit selfish, but I think men have a lower mental age than women, so I thought it was something like that. I didn't see such a pathetic side of him when we were dating. The reception was then cancelled, and the congratulatory gifts were returned to all the guests. We broke up the event with a light dinner because it was a waste of food that had been prepared. In the end, Paul...
I've been actively looking for a spouse, so it's not weird to be seeing two women at the same time, right? Plus, I broke up with Beth properly yesterday, so there's no problem with that, he said without showing any sign of acknowledging his own fault. I told Paul this. It's not a problem to date multiple people when looking for a spouse, but since you proposed to me, it was clear that I was the one you chose for marriage, right? If you're engaged, continuing a relationship with someone else is betrayal, so breaking off the engagement is only natural. But I'm still single, right? Cheating while dating doesn't lead to damages or anything, right?
It's different if you're engaged. Anyway, be prepared for a damages claim. When I said that, Paul glared at me intensely and stormed out of the venue. Why did Paul propose to you if he's with another woman? Doesn't Paul understand that marriage is based on law? After that, I decided to consult a lawyer to break off the engagement. There's evidence, and my friend recorded Paul's outbursts at the venue, so things progressed smoothly. The biggest issue was that we didn't know who Beth was, but when I looked at Paul's social media, I found pictures of him connected to Beth. We had detectives look into it and obtained personal information safely. The lawyer contacted us about the affair, but Beth said she didn't know Paul had a fiancé, so we arranged to meet. Originally, I planned for Paul to join us, but we couldn't reach him, and apparently he's been absent from work without permission. When I asked Paul's father, he told me that unexpectedly, not only Paul, but also his mother were missing, and they were searching for them. Reluctantly, Beth and I decided to discuss the matter at a cafe together. Beth is in her early 20s and is a quiet type of woman. She is 3 years older than me. I didn't know he was engaged, but I'm sorry nonetheless. She immediately apologized and showed me WhatsApp messages that proved she didn't know. It's been a year since we met. Don't you think it's about time we consider marriage or something? Haven't you thought about it at all? To which Paul responded coldly.
Why don't you think about it when we have a child?
He responded with this cold reply. That day's exchange occurred when Paul and I were already engaged, so maybe that's why he had such an attitude. When I saw this, I thought we should break up, but I was also anxious about rushing into marriage and losing him. Then one day he suddenly asked me to make today's date the last. She said that and showed me the WhatsApp from their last date, which was the day before the wedding. Immediately after the breakup,
Goodbye.
I confirmed that only one message had been sent. Beth's story didn't seem like a lie, and more importantly, Beth seemed furious with Paul. He turned out to be such a guy. Breaking up was the right choice.
I'm glad you didn't marry him and just lived together. You're still in your 20s, so let's choose a better man.
She even said that to me, and I nodded to Beth. Beth, I am sorry for calling you out on your affair, even though you are the victim.
No, I'm the one who should apologize.
We had a peaceful exchange and parted ways. Beth was a good person, and I'm glad. Some people seem to think cheating is justifiable, so from now on, don't go alone. Yeah, it was only good because Beth was a good person that things turned out well. Looking back now, I realize I might have been a bit arrogant. And then a month later, Paul suddenly visited my house. By the way, I've been living alone in an apartment since I started working. I talked to him with a chain lock on, but for some reason, Paul spoke down to me.
Beth and I have completely broken up, so I'll marry you.
He said that, so I ignored it and just conveyed my own demands. You've been missing all this time? More importantly, tell me where you are now.
I won't tell you until you sign the marriage certificate. I'll come again, so write down the necessary items in the entry fields and sign it properly.
With that, Paul left behind a marriage certificate with only his section filled out, and a sample of how to fill it out. Of course, I tore it up and threw it away immediately. What did he come here for? Such a nuisance. There's no way I'm marrying someone who was cheating. That week later, Paul came to my apartment as he had promised, so I talked with him through the chain lock on again. Personally, I wanted to pinpoint Paul's whereabouts and hoped he'd slip up, but it didn't go well. Paul only talked about marrying me.
Did you sign the marriage certificate?
No, of course not. We broke off the engagement, remember?
No, I'm done with Beth, and I promise I'll never cheat again.
Ah, yes. Then put it into practice when you marry someone else.
I don't want that. I'll be in trouble if you don't marry me.
What trouble would that be?
Well, you see, right now I'm living with my mom, and she's always complaining about everything, so it's tough. If we get married, you will prepare a new home for us, right? And I want you to take care of my mother while you're at it.
He said that, so I was not only angry but also amazed. Oh, I see. That must be tough.
Don't you feel sorry for me? So marry me.
I'll think about it.
Okay, I'll come back in a week, so I'm expecting a good answer.
With that, Paul left, but when I looked out the window, I could see him walking home. I thought I could tail him, so I decided to follow Paul. Paul boarded a train and got off at a station several stops away, then continued on foot. Seeing him enter a dilapidated apartment building that looked quite old, I made a phone call to someone. 30 minutes later, that person seemed to have come all the way here in a van, parking in a nearby parking lot, and I was surprised by the number of people who came. So many came? You mean the number of people who fit in a van? The person I called was Paul's father, but for some reason, there were 6 relatives from Paul's side, and I was surprised. Huh? What's going on, everyone?
You'll understand when you go. For now, let's head to the apartment where Paul went in.
Upon my father-in-law's suggestion, I rang the intercom of the apartment, and Paul's mother came out. Since we barged in with 8 people, Paul's mother turned pale and started making a scene. Why did you find out about this place? Is it fair to come in such a large group like this? Do you want to blame us that badly? You all have the worst personalities. However, it wasn't Paul's father who responded to this. Representing the relatives, Paul's mother's sister, Catherine, spoke harshly to Paul's mother.
What are you thinking? It was Paul who had the affair, right? Isn't it a parent's job to make them take responsibility? Hiding here like this, who's the coward?
It's Nancy's fault for being cheated on. Paul was put in an environment where he could cheat because of this woman. It's Nancy's fault for not taking care of her man properly. Paul's mother was saying such things, but that's when Paul's father argued back.
You're the kind of woman who's raised Paul to be the kind of man who cheats. Instead of blaming Nancy, you should be disciplining Paul.
You've always been like this, such a rigid and boring man. You're the one who's been cruel, demanding he take responsibility and pay alimony. As a father, you should be protecting your child. Paul's mother continued her rant, while Paul's father and the relatives around them sighed and some muttered, "She's unfit as a mother." Then Paul's father took an envelope out of his bag and thrust it towards Paul's mother, saying,
As a parent, I should correct my child's mistakes. But how can I correct you who are the mother and are in the wrong? I know you were cheating until last year. I'll sue you and that man for compensation, he said in a stern tone. Inside the envelope were photos showing Paul's mother and a young man in his 20s cheating. Actually, Paul's father noticed Paul's mother's affair last year and asked a detective for an affair investigation. Evidence was also collected, and he thought about divorcing her, but he reconsidered. At that time, Paul said to his parents, Everyone around me is getting married and I want to get married soon. I want to register in a year.
It seems he started actively participating in marriage consultation agencies and marriage hunting parties. Paul's father decided to hold off on the divorce, thinking that if his parents were not on good terms during the wedding, it would put a damper on the whole ceremony. On the day I came to greet you about the wedding, Paul's father secretly,
"If you two get married, we plan to divorce. Even so, will you still marry our son?"
When he asked me that, I answered that it's okay, but actually I had already heard about this from Paul. It seems that Paul's father told Paul about the divorce plan without saying anything to Paul's mother. When I heard about this during the proposal, I agreed to it, knowing full well. Paul's mother heard about the divorce plan from Paul, so that's probably why she ran away with Paul. No way I was surprised that Paul's mother was also cheating. At that time, Paul came out to protect his mother and said,
"It's worse to be unfaithful. If you were truly loved, you wouldn't think about cheating. I got tired of you complaining only about your anxiety and delaying my breakup with Beth."
What? But it's natural to have pre-marriage jitters, right?
Is it really natural? I hated it. But I thought you would value a family once we got married, so didn't I break up with Beth before the ceremony? There's no need to make such a big deal out of it.
He kept making selfish remarks, and of course, all the gathered relatives were disgusted.
I'm not saying something wrong, right? I broke up before getting married, right?
Why do I have to be blamed? Even celebrities do it, right? Paul and Paul's mother were trying to justify their affair, but well, there's no way that would fly. If you don't think cheating is bad, you can just think that way on your own, can't you? I wanted to know your whereabouts. Your opinion doesn't matter to me. Anyway, I know your address, so I'll send you a registered letter from a lawyer later, I said, and Paul's father nodded in agreement.
I'll also send a registered letter like you, Nancy. Then I'll also make the other man pay for compensation.
Paul and Paul's mother seemed to realize that it was pointless to insist that they weren't at fault, and they stood there dumbfounded with pale faces.
Nancy, shall we go back to the car first? I'll take you home.
When Paul's father said that, I gratefully agreed. But since none of the relatives came with us, I was surprised when I turned around to see 6 relatives confronting Paul's mother. What's going on with everyone?
Everyone came here together to get money back from Paul's mom.
Huh? Paul's father explained to me, who was surprised. Apparently, Paul's mother's affair partner was a young man in his 20s, and she had been spending quite a lot on him. When the money ran out, she lied to the relatives that Paul's father had become unemployed, borrowing money from them. As soon as they realized it was a lie, all the lenders demanded repayment in one go.
I didn't say anything at the wedding because it was a special occasion, but please return the money you borrowed from us.
I heard voices saying that and thought it's Paul's mother's own fault. An affair with a man in his 20s? How old is Paul's mother anyway? Considering Paul is around his 30s, right? Even if she gave birth in her early 20s, is she being in her 50s? Disgusting. At my workplace, a part-time woman in her 50s is dating a young male colleague, so it's not unheard of. After that, Paul's mother did not have enough money to pay them back, so Paul paid only what he could get out of his savings, but it was not enough at all. Before the wedding, it seems there was no problem returning the money to relatives, but in addition to returning the gifts, all the wedding expenses were borne by Paul's family. The after-party venue was also cancelled, but with a 100% cancellation fee, Paul is expected to pay the full amount. Moreover, Paul has been absent from work without permission, seemingly to avoid me and Paul's father. It seems he returned to work at the workplace, desperately clinging to a straw, but he was naturally dismissed. In the end, relatives of Paul who run the company ended up hiring Paul and his mother to live and work on site. It's quite hard labor. Paul works every day while crying, and Paul's mother, who had been a housewife for many years, is exhausted every day from unfamiliar work. Paul's parents are divorced with no property division, and the low salary minus the money to repay relatives is the take-home pay. It seems that they couldn't come up with compensation money for me and Paul's father, so they apparently borrowed money from somewhere else. Because of that repayment, it seemed that they are left with just the bare minimum for living expenses. Still, it seems they are living together in a small single-room dormitory, and all they need are utilities, food expenses, and other necessary costs. Catherine told me that there's no problem as long as they live without extravagance. By the way, this is what I heard from Paul's father. Paul's mother's affair partner turned out to be a married man, of all things. It seemed they didn't expect to be sued for compensation a year after breaking up, and that issue led to a big fight and eventual divorce for that couple. I heard that from now on, the affair partner's wife is preparing to claim compensation from Paul's mother as well. It's all over now for Paul's mother. If they become minimalists, there won't be any problems, right? As for me, I'm living a life that hasn't changed from before marriage. The only change is that I no longer have weekly dates. Nowadays, I don't think marriage is everything, and I find fulfillment in my work. Honestly, I have been thinking that I needed to get married, but now I'm wondering what will happen to my career in the future. That's one of the reasons I got cold feet. If I can focus solely on my career, then I'll just dive into work without hesitation. And even though the engagement was broken off, I don't think it's something to be sad about. I'm also enjoying my hobbies on my days off, and I'm living a fulfilling life. After the engagement was called off, I went out to eat with my two best friends, and they not only treated me, but also comforted me. They're both the type who aren't interested in marriage, and we're even talking about getting a roommate together. It seems like marriage is getting even further away, but for now, I'm imagining a happy future. You never know what will happen tomorrow in life, so I want to try things that I've always wanted to do. I hope the happy days will continue from now on. Thank you for listening to me so far. You're right, marriage isn't everything. What matters is how you want to live your life. I hope my friends and I can continue to live harmoniously together. And so, Nancy, who had been under the mistaken impression that it was okay to cheat as long as they weren't married yet, broke off the engagement and even received alimony. She would likely focus on her career and continue to live happily with her best friends. Once you're married, getting a divorce becomes much more complicated. It was fortunate for Nancy that she was able to break off the engagement before things got too messy. Nancy will no longer be in a hurry to get married.